Podcast advertising is the fastest growing ad space in the world right now. More money moving from FM and terrestrial traditional radio to audio podcast ads. The numbers are ridiculous. It's still only 2% of the entire online ad market.
The importance of influencers, relationships, podcasts. How do you help organizations to keep all that aligned?
They let us do all the work so they don't have to keep track of it all. That's a short answer. The longer answer is...
Today on the podcast, we'll be talking to Seth Greene. Seth is CEO of Domination, a marketing agency that works across a number of industries and all kinds of organizations, from startups all the way through to Fortune 500 companies. We'll start by talking about brand and how important it is to focus your brand in on the right audience, the right segment of your audience, to make sure it's having the best possible impact. We're also going to talk to him about the importance of using a variety of touchpoints and how by orchestrating those touchpoints in the right way, we can improve engagement, we can get people to become customers and retain them as customers over time. And then we'll be talking about humans, the fact that we're still dealing with people here. And by keeping that in mind, we can have a number of social and physical elements to our marketing that can make it more relatable to humans, even in the digital age. We're very fortunate to have Seth with us. Let's get started. Seth, thanks so much for being on the pod today. We're super excited to have you.
My pleasure. I'm super excited to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
So much of your background, so many years of just great history in the field of marketing. And I know that kind of when you first got started in your professional world, you really started in finance. And I thought that was really key and fascinating because so much of what we talk about here on the podcast about that digital customer experience, in particular, that post-click experience, the importance of making decisions in that space that people have to do. We think a lot about high consideration industries like finance, where it just takes a little bit more information. People aren't buying a t-shirt, right, or a hat, right? They're making critical and important decisions. I wonder, has starting in finance, did that kind of color your view of marketing, really kind of craft it from the beginning?
That's a great question. I think it absolutely did. So I started off selling something that was, intangible. Hey, follow our advice and 40 years from now, everything's going to work out. So I had to convince strangers that it was a good idea to trust me with their life savings or whatever portion of their financial life they were doing for a possible future benefit that could take forever, a very long time horizon to pull off. I think having to overcome those objections and sell that type of service made all of the future marketing we would do for us and for our clients a whole lot easier. I had an original undergraduate degree in theater, and people would ask me, how does that apply to finance or how does that apply to marketing? And I would say, well, if I can convince an audience of 2,000 people that they really believe that I'm in the middle of the Civil War and I'm a Union soldier, then making smart choices with your business or your finance should be easier.
Definitely the case. I could definitely see that. What are the kind of tactics that you think about when it comes to helping people kind of be guided through making those kind of decisions?
I think it all starts, what I've seen is the most important factor that affects the success or failure of any marketing campaign or business for that matter is proper selection of what I would call a laser focused micro niche target market. I think most business owners and entrepreneurs get this wrong. I see it every single day. They go, I want baby boomers with money. Or a dentist says, and I want anybody with teeth. They go really, really broad, women 35 to 70, right? They go really, really broad, not realizing that they probably don't have the budget to reach all those people. And a marketing campaign that's so generic, it appeals to all of those people and all the subsegments in that market isn't going to be effective anyway. And if they would just laser focus and narrow it down to the smallest possible audience, they'd get a lot better results.
As you kind of say that, I think it's really a problem that kind of transcends not only industry, but even transcends market size, right? So I know you've dealt with SMBs, but startups, but you also dealt with Fortune 500 organizations, large enterprise organizations. And I know even in my dealings with organizations of that size, it's often we want to please everybody. We want to communicate to everyone. And because of that, you're really communicating to no one, right? You're not meeting anyone's particular needs by not segmenting your audience and saying, well, who exactly am I talking to? Who is this ad campaign talking to? And then what is that landing page experience or website experience? How is it then supplementing that? And then dragging people all the way through the funnel. Is that a common mistake that you've seen even in those larger enterprise organizations?
I think the larger enterprises make it worse. They make that mistake more and bigger than everybody else because, as you said, they want to please everybody. Or, Home Depot, who we had the good fortune of serving, thinks their target market is everybody. And it's not. And it's harder to get a large, giant company like that to think smaller than it is a individual sole proprietor or a small business owner who might have 1, 10, 50 employees. It's a whole lot easier to get the smaller companies to be more agile and nimble and think differently and get better results. It took us, some of those Fortune 500 companies, it would take 6 months to a year just to get something out the door to start testing because everybody had to weigh in on it. And it took so long, as opposed to we could create a marketing campaign for a financial advisor, a chiropractor, a dentist, a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, get it out in a week or two and get them results.
It's so fascinating because, like, I think about, you mentioned Home Depot, right? I think about brands like maybe Home Depot and a competitor like Lowe's, who obviously have some overlap, right, in that Venn diagram in terms of who they're speaking to. But I would also argue also do serve different markets, right, and have different audiences. I think about like Walmart and Target, who again have some overlap, but again, I would argue still speak to different audiences. And I've always been a big believer, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on this, that the best brands are the ones that are both dearly loved and absolutely despised, right? Like, people love Apple and then people hate Apple. People love Southwest Airlines and people hate Southwest Airlines. And I believe that's right because both those brands have kind of said, here's what we're doing and here's who we're serving. And if that means it's going to upset an other audience of people, then that's fine because it's going to endear us to the ones that we are speaking to. And I'm kind of wondering, in your career, have you seen that kind of manifest itself as well?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. I think you run into the issue of them not. So, is there overlap between Walmart and Target? Absolutely. However, if you look at their core marketing, they're aimed at different people. And I think Target's a great case study because they recently, last year or two, depending on when you're listening to this or watching this, got in trouble because, as did Budweiser, right? They tried, this is not a political assessment. We're just talking marketing, but both of those brands tried to be more quote unquote woke, right? Budweiser hired, I believe, a transgender influencer and lost, I think it was more than a third, if not almost half of their market cap because of the backlash that their core audience, which is usually more conservative, more blue collar folks, revolted and stopped buying because they were like, that's not who we are. Disney's gotten into trouble occasionally, becoming going too far left. Target had issues with t-shirts that they put on the shelves, similar issue. And I think that's probably somebody at headquarters going, who's not in the Target demo, right? I am sure that the person at Budweiser who picked at the ad agency who said, we're going to use this transgender influencer, probably was in their 20s, probably might have been a millennial, right? Was young, was maybe part of that community and said, we need to represent these people more and didn't look at who's our real customer. Because had someone spoken up and said, hey, we're selling to construction work, I'm making this up. We're selling to blue collar construction guys, hard hat, lunch bucket, who watch Fox News perhaps, like they would have said, this ain't the best idea. So I think companies make the mistake all the time of not realizing either who their core customer really is or thinking they need to go broader as they get bigger and then neglecting the base that got them there in the first place.
Yeah, I think a lot of that goes into obviously not respecting the fact that, hey, it's okay to say I appeal to a certain audience and therefore I don't appeal to another audience, right?
Yes, you want to be polarizing. I want people to forgive the example. I want you to either love me or hate me because there is no money in the middle. You nailed it, right? If you're just lukewarm, you're not going to build a really powerful, strong brand and be worth much. But they either love Apple or they hate Apple. Great. I want people to hate Apple if I'm in charge of Apple because they're not my customer. I want them to go to Samsung or Android or whatever. I want the diehard fans who are going to buy every single thing Apple puts out. And those are the people that made Apple one if not top two, top three most valuable companies in the world.
Absolutely. And, let's take that Apple example just for a second, right? Because I think that's a good one because, okay, they've made this decision, right? They said, this is who we are. This is who we're going to appeal to. And it affects every aspect of their marketing, certainly their product, right? And what they do there. But again, if you go to the Apple website, that has a very distinct look and feel and experience from perhaps a Samsung or just a more generic kind of like, electronics or digital product operator, because it's reflective of their brand and who they are and who they're speaking to. And I would even argue, Apple is not the most user-friendly website by any stretch of the imagination, but it serves the purpose of their core audience, right? And that's the experience that they're carrying through all the way. And ultimately the results show for themselves, right? I mean, you're talking about one of the Magnificent Seven, right? One of the ones that really help move the market. So it's not like they're making a mistake by doing that. Has you had have to consult and deal with organizations, especially those enterprises, which can be tougher? How do you make that sale to them, right? How do you get them across the finish line? They really understand, hey, look, you're trying to serve everyone. You need to niche down because that is what's going to help you define what that experience should be all the way through.
So the good news is, so if it's a smaller organization, we can say, hey, I understand you're doing something different. You hired us because you want something different. You want better results than you've gotten before. You got to do something different. We think this is that thing to start with. And we can say, hey, listen, just because we're launching this marketing campaign, don't stop anything you're already doing until we beat it, until we prove that we're better. So we can run a test and say, we're going to do a separate marketing campaign to this target market. Nobody else will see it. So if it doesn't work, if it fails, you will not change your core business at all. 9 times out of 10, it works incredibly well. And they're like, wow, there's something to this niche marketing, right? Everybody in today's day and age, we want it customized. We want it for us. We want to think this is for me, not this is for everybody. So it's let's test it. It won't hurt you if it doesn't work, other than the time and money put into it, but it won't hurt the rest of your business. So you got nothing to lose. Let's give it a shot. And obviously we've got thousands of case studies about probably a business in a similar industry that we did it for, that it worked, to help assuage their concerns. I mean, you make an excellent point about Apple. So I have been an Apple user for 20 plus years on the phone side, and had an original Apple II computer that I learned to code on when I was, a teenager. And I will tell you that Samsung, Android, Google, whatever phones, we may start a riot here from the Apple lovers, but they're better products, right? The Google phones, the stuff Samsung does things Apple cannot do. They have physically better specs and physically better technology. But if you tell that to a diehard Apple user, they will fight you for it and go, I don't care, I love my Apple, which is what they've built. I can build a good product, maybe not the best, but I can build it good and people will love it so much that they will buy it no matter what, even though Samsung could be screaming, look, our phones do things Apple don't have. And they're like, we don't care, we're buying Apple anyway. I'm an Apple person. You want your people to say, I'm a Shamir person. I'm a blank person. You want part of their identity to be wrapped up in you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think, I know your answer to this question, so let's kind of talk about it, right? How does that carry through in the messaging throughout the marketing experience? So, we tend to think marketing is very kind of very simple silo kind of. We still use that term funnel. I'm trying to avoid using it because it's totally inaccurate, right? It's a much broader experience. But you think about that idea of that experience, that funnel that people are driving through. So again, you're communicating your brand and who you are. You're trying to communicate to a particular segment of that audience via the ad, right? You want that message to then carry through all the way to that landing page or that website, so you're still getting that same feel. But oftentimes, and we started talking about this at the beginning, you have these higher consideration purchases where it's not going to be one touch. It's going to be multi-touch. It's going to take them a week or two to make a decision because it's how I'm investing my money, because it's healthcare, right? Because it's a large trip. I'm planning my honeymoon, right? You're doing these things that are going to require you to stay engaged over a period of time. How does that messaging and that laser focus, how does that help that happen as people move through that planning experience?
So it helps them by speeding up the process. So I interviewed a financial advisor or advisory firm yesterday, and they get the lion's share of their business from their podcast, which is great. We produce dozens of shows a week for our clients. And they've identified that from the time a person first listens to an episode of the show to the time they show up in their office is 12 to 18 months. Because that podcast, while very successful, is also really generic, broad financial advice. Now, if they had so for example, I have multiple shows for my business, for my own businesses, one of which is specifically focused on business owners and reducing their taxes. One of which is specifically focused on cutting their kids' cost of college tuition. So I have different podcasts for different services so that those conversations can occur at a higher level. And we can take someone from first touch to qualified appointment in less than 30 days because it's the marketing, the copywriting, the messaging is nailed to their exact problem. So it doesn't take a year to a year and a half for them to make up their minds. It's yes, that's me. I have this problem now. I want it solved now. I now realize you guys are the ones to solve it. Sign me up. So you can speed up the process.
And are you helping your clients and the companies you work with, are you also helping them learn different ways to re-engage with that audience as you're trying to move them and kind of nurture them through that funnel or that process?
Absolutely. I mean, I saw a stat yesterday that over 70% of, let's say, of Facebook advertisers were doing a lousy job retargeting. Their retargeting, if they did it at all, was broken and wasn't trackable and they weren't set up right. And that's billions and billions of dollars of ad spend that's getting wasted. So I think not just retargeting online, but what we've seen is we started out in the direct mail space 27 years ago. We never left it, despite all the social media, despite everything else. Direct mail remains a core part of our business. And what's been a delight is as fewer and fewer people do direct mail because they think it's all supposed to be online and online is free or cheaper or easier or faster. That means there's less clutter in your mailbox. That means the stuff we send for our clients shows up more. And even though the millennials or the YZ, whatever generation they are, who theoretically lives on their phones, look at my tween daughters' faces when a package shows up in the mail from Amazon or Shein. They get super excited. It's not the same thing as if they get a link on their phone. There's nothing that will ever replace a physical box or something showing up at your doorstep. And you can communicate with theater, with impact in a way that no email ever could or online ad ever could. So I think you add that to the mix and you can make whatever else you're doing more effective.
All those touch points, all those experiences, like they add up, right? They're cumulative, right? None of those things operate in a vacuum. They're all kind of helping each other out to ultimately create that experience that helps a person feel a certain way about a brand, about a product, and again, to kind of move them through to become that customer and maintain that customer feel. So for a second, let's kind of zoom out, right? And let's kind of go high level and look at this more broadly, because ultimately, and you touched on it, right? You're trying to create a sense of brand so that someone has that positive connotation so that when they're ready to engage, when they have a particular need for a product or service, you're top of mind, they're thinking about you in a positive light, right? It's what consumer packaged goods does so well. It's the reason you still see commercials for, Tide or things like that, right? It's not because they expect someone to literally like, oh, commercial for Tide, but they want you to have a positive connotation. So when you do need it and you are at the grocery store and you're looking at all the different brands, you feel good about Tide. Like, oh yeah, Tide. Like, yeah, I feel right. And you kind of take that out. Well, there are so many different ways to do that now. And again, we're not limited to the typical kind of digital ad in terms of what we're doing. We're certainly not limited to commercial. Podcasts have become a outstanding way of doing that. You mentioned yourself how you use podcasts. How have you seen organizations doing a better job of leveraging the podcast to kind of create that feel and that relationship, that comfort level to help people engage more with their experience?
Obviously, we're biased because we produce dozens and dozens and dozens of shows every week and drive millions of downloads. And have a bunch of top ranked shows. So podcasts are a very intimate form of media. You think about it, you're basically in someone's ear for maybe half an hour or longer. You can't buy that type of television time. It would cost a fortune and they DVR past you. So one, it's a form of media that allows you to communicate directly to your target market in a way that almost nothing else does. Two, it allows you to build a relationship not only with them, but with the guests that you're interviewing. And if you follow like a proven process that we've laid out in the book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, you can literally turn that into profitable relationships and revenue on a consistent and regular basis. I think there's virtue and excellence in having your own show and being the host of it. There's huge opportunities in being a guest on somebody else's show in front of their audience. And podcast advertising is the fastest growing ad space in the world right now. There are more money moving from FM and terrestrial traditional radio to audio podcast ads. It's like the numbers are ridiculous in terms of it's still only 2% of the entire online ad market, but it is moving in huge amounts because you can laser target the exact show you want to be on, your ads on, and who that target market is, right? Is a ludicrous example. If I had a coaching program for Elvis impersonators, there is no radio show nationwide, right, aimed at Elvis impersonators. It's not a big enough market to justify a TV or radio show. Maybe there's a TV show in Vegas. I don't know. But there isn't a nationwide one. But There's multiple podcasts aimed at Elvis impersonators because it's not big enough for a giant TV show to support, but it's certainly big enough for a podcast because the barrier to entry is lower and there's a huge opportunity there. No matter who your target market is, I'd be willing to bet you and probably guarantee that there are podcasts aimed at your target market.
It's funny because for the last, I don't know, it's been now 5-10 years, influencers have been such a kind of a potent, aspect of that. And in a sense, whether it's podcasters becoming influencers, leveraging podcasts, right? Ultimately, it kind of comes down to a bit of a relationship play, right? Where you're kind of building these relationships, maybe leveraging the relationship that someone else has built with their audience, right? And kind of piggybacking off of that, by doing your advertising, by being on that podcast and so forth. With everything becoming so digital, with everything becoming so AI, I'd love for you to speak to the value you still see in building those human relationships, and how important that is for brands and organizations who want to make sure they're providing a good experience.
Absolutely. I think AI makes it more important, right? As more and more people adopt it, use it more, you're going to see more and more AI sourced social media posts, copywriting. You're going to see websites built, people building entire websites using AI, and AI is doing all the work, all the writing and all the work. I think it's going to become more and more obvious what's been done by AI and what's been done by a human. And I think it makes the human touch even more important as people get more and more digital, whether it's AI or anything else, and the human element it gets lost. Businesses that still have humans will work even better, and people will gravitate towards those because we want to buy from people or organizations we know, like, and trust. We don't necessarily want to talk to an AI every single time, a voice assistant. We still do you want your lawyer to be Lawyer GPT, or do you want someone who went to law school who's been practicing for 30 years and has done your case 10,000 times, right? You're going to want a human because no matter how good AI gets, you're never going to be able to replace, as far as I know, the emotion that AI just can't replicate.
And I think to your point, right? There's still value to the physical, right? There's still value to the tangible. It's funny. Our family had to go to the mall for some reason. I don't remember why. But I was amazed at how many kids I saw at the mall, like how many teenagers and young people I saw at the mall. I was like, I thought kids didn't do this anymore. I thought they were, in some dark room, stuck on their phone.
Shopping online. No, it's funny. They're not. One, they still want, we just went to New York City for college tours a couple weeks ago. And other than the tours, I think we spent 80% of our time shopping. It wasn't me. It was my wife and daughters. It was mostly driven by my daughters. And one of them, who's the shopaholic, for lack of a better, even though she's not addicted, like the shopper, went in every single store and was touching all of the clothes and holding them up. And I'm like, how come you're not using an augmented reality app at home to fake try it on? And how come you want to physically, you could scroll through? Why do you want to spend 8 hours today physically looking at things? Because you cannot replace that no matter how hard you try. And they're also going to the mall not just to shop, but a lot of them, again, I have tween daughters, they're going to the mall to hang out. Socialization, like they go to the grocery store. She goes to the grocery store with her friends and they walk around for an hour and a half. And maybe they spend $5 on a snack, but it's an excuse of it's a place, it's not home, it's not school, we're walking around. And Starbucks would kick us out eventually. So, you cannot replace the physical option, that physical interaction and that physical environment.
Yeah, it's funny how it all comes full circle, right? I mean, it's how we grew up, right? That's what it was for us, and then it kind of went away for that, and people were so scared and worried, that's gone or it's not going to come back, but it's just come by itself. It's going full circle. To your point, I think because people crave that, and eventually, if it's gone for a while, it's like, okay, there's a need, right, to be able to return to that. So I wonder, we can kind of wrap up with this question, with all the things we've talked about, the importance of influencers, relationships, podcasts, the importance of how you're engaging people, how you're re-engaging them, how you're building their brand. How do you help organizations to keep all that aligned? Right, that can quickly become chaotic if it's not being properly orchestrated, so that you're again singing the same song in the same way, in all those different mediums across all those different channels and touch points in a way that they resonate together versus being kind of chaotic, right? And just causing a cacophony of noise that ends up really hurting you more than it does helping you.
Well, if they're smart and able to, they let us do all the work so they don't have to keep track of it all. That's a short answer. The longer answer is really, really well organized dashboards, SOPs, Google Sheets, whatever way, CRMs. It takes a lot of manual labor to make the automation work and look flawless.
Seth, thank you so much for your time. I know you were able to kind of squeeze me in your schedule to have this conversation. I know the audience super appreciates it, and we super appreciate you. And thank you so much.
Our pleasure. We've got a special gift for your audience. So my 9th best-selling book is The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, How to Turn Warm, Fuzzy Feelings into Cold, Hard Cash. If you go to ultimatepodcastbook.com, you can get 30% off the Amazon price for a physical copy, thanks to Shamir and the podcast. So go to ultimatepodcastbook.com. We will ship you out a copy at 30% off. I guarantee you it's like the best $15 or whatever it is that you've ever spent on marketing, except listening to Shamir. If you're unhappy with the book in any way, shape, or form, I'll buy it back from you so you got no risk. ultimatepodcastbook.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. We'll make sure that ultimatepodcastbook.com is in the notes for the show. Seth, again, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.